Thank you. Thank you, Brian. So let me see if I can get this thing to move. Hurrah! Okay. So welcome, everybody. Everybody tosses this word value around, and the more people use it, the less it seems to mean. So, there's one type of value that we have in our projects that's related to satisfying user stories. So in fact, a user story includes the that's the value definition. And that's one type of value, okay? But what we're talking about today is a different type of value. And, you'd think value was value, but it's not. So what I hope to address is, first of all, to discuss how businesses define and measure value, and then translating quality into business terms and making sure that your QA, in fact, delivers value that the business recognizes. And perhaps some of you are familiar with this phrase: don't you care about quality? And I bet that if you have not said it, you've thought it, as people are cutting your QA activity short, not giving you the proper resources and priorities and so forth. And we tend to think this way, and I think we need to step back and reconsider. So I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that there's a lot of people that resist QA. And I think a lot of that resistance relates to disliking it. And to some people, it means that there's a lot of uncreative, bureaucratic, busy work and detail and effort that somebody with the title of QA is saying, go do this stuff, instead of what the people feel is the important things that they do. Quality assurance, by its very nature, does focus on negatives. And we've got kind of a reputation for QA interfering with delivery. We can discuss that further. But there's this other thing that I want you to be conscious of. And that is that I think in many instances, QA people are their own worst enemies, and that QA people are often creating a lot of the resistance that we're encountering. Now, consider what we do. We say, do what we tell you to do because we know best. And do it because we say it's good for you, even though you think it just gets in your way. And then we say, if you don't do what we tell you to do, it means you don't care about quality. Now, I think that if you were to go to anybody that you work with and ask them if they care about quality, everybody would say, of course I care about quality. And yet we've managed to funnel that into this, follow our procedures, do all this stuff that doesn't seem very useful to you, and that if you don't do what we tell you to do, because we're the ones who know and care about quality, and if you don't do what we tell you to do, it means you don't care about quality. So if you put yourself in their position and you've said, but I do care about quality, and therefore I don't believe you. I don't believe you with regard to this, and I probably therefore don't need to believe you with regard to anything that you say. Okay. Now, tell you what happens. we attend conferences. You know, perhaps you're familiar with conferences like PNSQC, for instance. And we go to a conference like this, and I can certainly remember at many conferences, many of the speakers basically said, look, you've got to go back and tell those people what to do because you're the ones who know and care about quality, and you've got to tell them what to do. And so you do that, and you get your head handed to you. So you go back to the next conference, and you say, hey, I tried that, and they really took me apart. And what does the talking head at the front of the room say? You got to do it more and be even more annoying. Now, that unfortunately is the message that our industry's supposed leaders have often promulgated. So I think that we got to step back and say, that's the wrong approach from the get-go. And anybody who's advocating it is really not somebody to be listened to. So, you know, procedures, especially ones that other people consider onerous, you know, we equate following our procedures with quality, okay? And procedures are not quality. And everybody but us knows it. Okay? And these other people, when we're here harping on, you know, go do these procedures, they are really doubtful that we have any idea what we're doing, and certainly not that we're aiding quality. And consequently, more and more teams are leaving the quality stuff to the developers. And we've heard this in a number of the talks already today, and we'll probably hear it a few more times in the next couple of days. So realize that you're in a sales position and you're selling QA. You're not selling quality. People believe in quality. They just don't believe in us. And people only do things when they see the WIFM, the what's in it for me. Okay? And what's in it for me is not what's in it for me, it's what's in it for them. And it means that it saves them their time, their effort, their aggravation. If it saves me my time, effort, and aggravation, they couldn't care less. And we need to get to the core, get to the heart. A core set of things that people agree upon are important. And procedures and busy work are not. Now, I give a talk, says I work for a jerk and I'm self-employed. And you know, the fact is, QA too often acts like jerks. And the secret that I've found is that we've got to be helpful, not just from our own perspective, but from the perspective of the people that we're expecting to change their behavior. So let me share a little war story. I've actually been involved with software quality assurance before there was software quality assurance. I started out as a programmer and then moved into systems programming, was very technical. And I went to work for a major bank and implemented a major application software system, and then got put in charge of one of two systems programming groups in the bank. I was in charge of the systems programming group that supported the applications. We did things like manage the database and communications, and did a lot of stuff that was, in hindsight, software quality assurance. But we didn't know that term at the time. And what I found was that instead of getting on people's cases and getting in their faces, if I made it easier for them to do the things that I thought were helpful, rather than not to do them, people would take the easy path. So we made these practices inherent in the work. We weren't scolding people, sanctioning people, and we didn't harp on quality or get in their faces. Now, let me share a second part of this story, because there was a second systems programming group, and they were the ones that were responsible for the hardware, the operating system, the operations environment. And the main systems programmer in that group had, when he would update the operating system, he and I had all of our systems programming files and programs and so forth password protected. He was a very clever person, and he figured out some kind of algorithms, and I know algorithms are in everybody's mind these days, but he'd figured out some kind of algorithm for calculating the password. And so he would come to the computer operator, and the computer operator would load in his program update, and the system would ask for a password. And then this other systems programmer would calculate real quickly what the password was and had it written down, hand it to the computer operator, who would then key it in, and the update would take place. Yeah, that all sounds perfectly reasonable until you realized that the operator was also pretty clever. And as soon as the systems programmer would get out of the way, the operator would reverse engineer the algorithm, figure out how to calculate the algorithm, and then, in order to test that he had actually figured out the algorithm, what would he do? He'd update the operating system. And guess what happens when somebody who doesn't really know what he's doing updates the operating system? And this was continually happening because this other systems programmer was kind of putting this challenge in the face of the computer operator. Now, I was using passwords to update stuff day in and day out, except I didn't rely on the computer operator entering it. I entered it in a different way. And the computer operator didn't even know that there was anything password protected being updated. So, make it easy for people to do the right stuff, and don't create a challenge to do wrong stuff. Now, a lot of us think of quality as lack of defects, and we know, cars have various levels of quality. And if a car has defects, it does make us rate its quality lower. But remember, there are all kinds of other things that we think of related to quality: innovation and elegance and workmanship and so forth. And the same is true of systems. Okay, so when we're thinking about quality and asking people to do things to help improve and support quality, we need to be attentive to a whole lot more than just what we consider defects. Now, ultimately, all decisions are financial, and they're measured ultimately by return on investment. Now, I'll tell you a little secret, since I do a lot of work with return on investment and listen to a lot of supposed experts. I will tell you that most of the ROI determinations fall prey to common pitfalls that diminish the worth of that return on investment calculation, often to zero and sometimes worse. Now, what I call real ROI avoids those pitfalls. In fact, real ROI, key aspect of it is that it avoids all those pitfalls. I can't get into all of them now, and I want to give you a little bit of common information. So recognize that return on investment considers both costs and benefits, and that there's a couple of common calculations. One of them is called payback period. And basically what happens is that when you're developing a system, initially you're investing money, you're spending money, and that continues on until it kind of levels off, and then it starts rising again as the system becomes harder and harder to maintain. Your benefits take a while to accrue. Ultimately, though, they do, and hopefully they will exceed your accumulated costs, and then they start tapering off. And that's when we typically need to replace or drastically update. So the payback period is that point in time when the accumulated benefits equal the accumulated costs, and then theoretically and usually the accumulated benefits continue to exceed the accumulated costs. So organizations want to get their payback yesterday. Time was when you'd expect to get payback in a year or 2 years or 3 years. Now we're talking weeks, months, whatever. The other common format is the ratio, the return, meaning the benefits, over the investment cost, times 100 to clear the decimals out of the ratio, out of the percentage. So let me just share with you one pitfall, that it's very common that when people are identifying benefits, the only thing that they're identifying are cost savings. And there are really 4 types of financial benefits. 2 of them relate to expenses or costs, and 2 to revenue. So cost savings come from eliminating current expenditures. And unfortunately, of course, the most common way that we eliminate, or that a company eliminates current expenditures, is by eliminating people, us, and we don't like that. The other type of cost-related benefit is avoidance of future costs that would otherwise be there were it not for whatever it is we've done. People generally prefer cost avoidance, but unfortunately, cost avoidance is a less reliable benefit than cost savings. The other side is revenue, money in the door. And one form of revenue benefit is revenue enhancement, where you sell more, you sell additional products, you charge more, you get higher margins, you collect more of what you've sold. The other form of revenue benefit is revenue protection, keeping the revenue that you've got. Now, this comes in 2 different flavors: by making competitive products and by compliance. So ultimately, if you are in a regulated industry and you do not comply with applicable laws, regulations, and standards, you're going to be precluded from doing whatever it is you do. Now, the net or the fundamental definition of a benefit is that it's the difference between what will happen with the proposed solution versus no change or business as usual. And I think people in QA assume that everybody knows the value we provide, and yet I don't think that that's really the case. We assume that what we do provides value. I hope that it does, but sometimes people can't see it and it's hard to measure. So, and this is echoing what Eric said in the keynote this morning, and other people have said, and you'll probably hear it again. Bug counts are not value. The dollar effects of those bugs, if the customers get those bugs, that's where business value comes in. And there are two ways that we can show this, quantify this. One is if we have measures of our process. This is the most reliable method, except that very few organizations have realistic and accurate measures of their process. And so if we continue doing what we're doing, that would be the business as usual, the no change. And then here's what will happen with QA. But if we don't have good measures of what's currently happening, then it's very unlikely we'll be able to reliably and responsibly project. So the other approach that people often take, and this is a little riskier, is cherry picking. So you wait for something awful to occur, and then you say, oh, you know, if we'd done what we said you should do, that giant loss or problem could be avoided. So if you've got any ideas on this, and relating it to your own life, hopefully you can. I'd be glad to talk with you more. Anybody know what this is about? Brian, you said you worked down the street from Boeing. I think you probably saw the blood in the streets and the tears there. I'm sure that Boeing, in hindsight, probably could have found time and resources to do a bit more testing.
Yes.
Yeah. So hopefully we've seen how businesses define and measure value. Okay. And we need to translate quality and quality assurance into business terms and make sure that your QA, in fact, is delivering the value that the business recognizes. So this is a diagram of some of the courses and consulting that I do and their relationship to the various phases of the development process. Glad to talk with you about them. I do teach ROI and as well as testing and requirements and so forth. And pack a lies about me. And so Brian, I don't know, do we have any questions?
I don't see any queued up. I'm looking in the chat and I don't see anything now. Guys, I put the presenter feedback as well as the conference survey links in the chat again. If you guys have questions for Robin, please post them. We got plenty of time here, but go ahead and toss them out there if you've got them. Really thorough on that one specific, how to get to the right message the right, sustainable, value understanding. Really, it takes different organizations and businesses different ways to get there, but it's crucial for sustainability. It really is.
But it's not defects. It's not what QA people count.
No.
So we've pushed people into silence.
That's right. All right. Well, looking in the queue there, we got that. Really good tie-off. I mean, it's just it's again, just piecing all this together. These are critical pieces in the big picture. So, Robin, thank you so much for presenting that. If any questions do flow in, I'll make sure route them to you here. But for the most part, I think this concludes. This is the last afternoon session for the management track, and so at 4:30 Pacific Standard Time in half an hour, we're going to have our final keynote. And so that's going to be the keynote Zoom link that you guys will click on to go attend that. And then Phil will do some wrap up, and then we'll finish that off. So that is the game.
And if you want to contact me, it's at robin@gopromanagement.com. So
yep, absolutely.
Thank you much.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you, Robin. All right. You guys have a good one, and we'll roll the deck here for a few minutes. Let this finish up. Thanks all.